Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Attention all business owners and creative minds. Do you need a unique and personalized touch for your products? Look no further than Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs. We offer custom laser engraving services for a variety of products, including promotional items and corporate or personal gifts. With state-of-the-art equipment and a team of skilled designers, we can engrave intricate designs on virtually any material. Whether it's a special message, a company logo, or a custom design, Romika Laser Engraving will help you make your mark. And the best part, our prices are affordable and our turnaround time is quick.
I couldn't be happier with the work Romika Laser Engraving did for me. The engraving on my product was precise and exactly what I wanted.
So don't wait any longer to add a personal touch to your products. Call Romika Laser Engraving and Custom Designs today at 817-400-4040 or visit our website at romikadesigns.com. We look forward to helping you make your mark.
What's up, bros and besties? How's it going? How are we doing, North Texas? Welcome to another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jazz Monet. And give me just 1 second while I fix something on my end. I just want to make sure that I can see y'all's comments because sometimes y'all get in the chat and I just want to make sure that I can see y'all's questions and y'all's opinions about what we're going to talk about today. So, hey, JV, good to so we've got of course, I do want to talk about Wemby and Ant and the NBA All-Star Game and all the talk that's going on, some conversation not only about the NBA All-Star Game and the future of the NBA, but also about the face of the NBA and what that means for how the NBA is being marketed, how it's what the projection is for the future, and basically how the plans have played out so far. Now, on my end, and I don't know if this is my laptop or if this is y'all's as well, but it looks like I'm frozen. So, if you're in the chat, let me know if you can hear me and if I'm moving. If I'm not moving, it is what it is. Hopefully you can at least hear me so we can still have a fun conversation about everything today. Because, of course, we're going to start off with some shout outs and call outs before we get into anything else. So, when it comes to the shout outs and call outs, we are going to start off first with one Mr. Michael Jordan. That's a shout out and a happy birthday to Michael Jordan. So, a happy birthday, obviously, because Michael Jordan has turned 63. Oh my goodness, how time flies. But a shout out because his NASCAR team actually won the Daytona 500. And they won it in what could be considered a buzzer beater fashion for NASCAR. So essentially, his car started out in 26th place and ended up moving into first within the last 500 yards. Now, I won't pretend like I actually watched the race, but when I read that, I was like, wow, that is pretty major. So, of course, when it comes to the GOAT, and it feels like he's trying to be the GOAT of damn near everything at this point. But when it comes to the GOAT, I mean, what else would you expect? I did see part of the interview where he talked about how what it felt like to be a champion again. He talked about birth. So I'm just glad that he's able to still celebrate wins like that and consider himself a champion. Okay, so the next thing that we want to look into is, in terms of shout outs and call outs, is I got to do some shout outs and call outs based on some responses to my last few pieces of content. So the first shout out goes to, and I want to try to say this man's name right this time, now that I know his fans will be all up in my comments, even if I mention him one time. But the first shout out goes to Mikhail Shidorov, who is the male figure skater who won gold for the individual competition at the Winter Olympics. So, if you've been watching my content, because I know some of y'all show up for the lives, but might not see the individual videos. So the As It Is in Sports, So It Is in Life segment, I have been taking that and putting it into its own like standalone video, which is one of the things that I think got that video more attention than it normally would have. But I made a video talking about Ilya Malinin and what I thought of his comments after he fell to 8th place when everybody expected him to win gold. That's what the video is about. I made one reference to Shidorov. And granted, I did say that he won because he was the most stable, which is technically true. But when I tell you, his fans were all up in my comments, they felt like they had to set the record straight. And the reason why this is a shout out and not a call out is because while they did have a lot to say that I only mentioned this man one time, and I even had to clarify, I'm like, yo, this is not analysis, all right? Like, this is me just giving commentary. I wasn't even really trying to talk about him for real. But they kept it respectful. They kept it respectful. They made sure that I put some respect on his name. They let me know that him winning gold was no easy feat. They let me know that he had some things in his routine that nobody else could pull off either. They made sure I understood that he had a technical score that was lower than Ilya Malinin's. However, he still had what it took to win gold. And I shouldn't make it sound like he didn't do anything just because everybody else fell down. So I didn't feel attacked, and I just want to say props to them for finding whoever might have been talking about their dude, their guy, because granted, there really wasn't enough talk about the actual gold medal winner. A lot of the conversation after that competition was like, oh my God, did y'all see how Ilya Malinin fucked up? As opposed to, did y'all see how Shidorov did like a near perfect routine? It was. So, y'all win that one. Thanks for setting the record straight. Thanks for standing up for your dude, and thanks for keeping it respectful. Now, on the heels of that, I got to call out the Ilya Malinin fans because you motherfuckers did the opposite. It was way too many of y'all crashing out in the comments. And it's like, if you disagreed, and a couple of people were like this, y'all simply disagreed on the premise of his comments. Y'all felt like it shouldn't be taken as bitterness, and y'all felt like there was actually an argument to be made that him not going to the competition in Beijing actually did affect his performance. And maybe it did. But I will say this, he had 4 years to cope with the fact and plan around the fact that he didn't go to Beijing. As soon as he knew he wasn't going to Beijing in 2022, he knew he was going to try to still go to the Olympics in 2026, and he should have started planning for it then. And I know nothing really quite prepares you for the spotlight that's on you at the Olympics, especially when people give you a name like Quad God, but he owned the name, okay? So we can't take the accountability away from him. I get your point, I get what you're saying, but we cannot remove the accountability. Said what he said. Not only that, but he's only 21 himself, and I want that for him. And not only that, but he is still a gold medalist. Like, he helped the USA team win in the team competition. And yes, that's a team competition, but if you were watching, anybody who was watching knows that the US getting the gold, that was very much in question until he did his routine. His routine sealed it. He should be proud of that, 100%. He'll be back. I want him to have that chance to redeem himself. But y'all, Malanin fans, I need y'all to chill the fuck out. And if you are going to crash out, at least actually watch my content and understand what I'm saying. Some of y'all are in my comments talking about shit I ain't even say. Like, y'all are sounding just as bad as he did after the fucking competition. It's like, okay, like, I see why your fans are like this, because you're like this. Like, take a lesson from the Shiderov fans, and if you disagree with somebody, there's a way to do it gracefully, respectfully, and have an actual conversation, and maybe even educate somebody. Oof, y'all are a hot mess. All right, so moving on from that, the next call out goes to people criticizing women athletes for how they look. And this is kind of a general call out, but it's also kind of a read and react, because there's an article that goes along with it. And even though this article did come out 2 days ago on BBC.com, it's a topic that I've seen come up regularly. I remember as far back as 2012 reading an article about young girls who didn't want to go into sports because of concerns about how they looked, or concerns about how they'd be judged for how they looked. And so probably every year it technically comes up, but every couple of years, every few years, there's a high profile article that really highlights the issue. And so here's a couple of quotes from this particular article that came C.com. It's by Beth Elal Williams, and it's titled "Female Athletes Hit Back at Weird and Derogatory Comments About Their Appearance." And so scrolling down to the middle of the article, it says, Wales and Saracens rugby player Georgia Evans, who was criticized during the Women's World Cup for wearing makeup and styling her hair, said how she played had, quote, nothing to do with what I look like, end quote. And then it goes on to say, a survey by Women in Sport published last month found the number of girls who dreamt of becoming professional athletes had fallen to its lowest level since 2020, which the charity said was because of gender stereotypes. And it goes on with more information from Georgia, more quotes from Georgia. It says, at the beginning of her career, Georgia said she received derogatory comments and also others based on stereotypes, including being referred to lesbian. She said, my sexuality has no bearing on butch or whatever I present myself to be. I'm not going to change who I am. So I would still turn up on game day with my tan done, my nails done, hair, everything. And it goes on to just talk about some other instances of Olympic gymnasts and other athletes who have had to deal with just like criticism for how they look. And so the reason why this bothers me is on several fronts. Like, gender stereotypes just get on my fucking nerves. Like, Facebook, like, here's what's funny. So everybody talks about how Facebook is so good at targeting. Like, they're the best platform to advertise on because of the way that they target demographics, and they can really get down to the bottom of who a person is. A running joke between me and my friends is the fact that Facebook thinks I'm a lesbian, and they keep advertising like lesbian dating sites to me, and just like other stuff that just you can kind of tell it's like meant for, that group, which, nothing against that, but it's funny. And the only thing that we can figure out is that I don't post pictures that seem to be like designed for the male gaze, and I like sports, and I played roller derby. And it's just kind of weird that, like, without me ever posting anything about having a girlfriend, liking women, anything like that, somehow this platform that's supposed to be so smart and know everything about how to categorize people and how to segment people and advertise to them, even though I've been on the platform over a decade, well over a decade, cannot figure out something as simple as my sexuality. I've even put, like, in the past, in a relationship with, this person who is a man, but it's like, nope, you like sports, you're a lesbian. It's fucking weird. But anyway, getting back to the actual issue here, the thing that upsets me the most, I think, is the fact that when it comes to being the best in your sport, when it comes to being an elite athlete, a lot of people who find themselves on that path are people who started that path at a very young age. So we're talking kids starting in their sport as young as 8 years old, sometimes younger, but typically no later than like high school if they want to really get to the top of their sport, right? So when we have women and young girls who are opting out of sports, not because they realize that they weren't cut out, love basketball, and they realize that they're 5'3" and have no ups, and so it's not for them, although there are some, short ones in the WNBA right now, but because of how they looked, because they're worried about being judged for how, because they might look a hot mess after practice and they don't want to be pictured that way. They don't want crush to see them that way because somebody might think they're a lesbian if they decide to play lacrosse. All that shit is dumb. It's like you've literally got girls counting themselves out from potentially very rewarding careers, very rewarding lifestyles, just because of judgment for how they look. And it's time for it to stop. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's time that we get to a place where we at least stop giving so much credibility to these comments. This does not need to be an ongoing conversation in the world of sports, what various women look like and what they might have in their pants or who they might have in their bed just because of the sport that they play and how they look while playing it. Most people, and this goes for men. Men also look very different when they're dolled up and going out as opposed to how they look after practice or how they look after a game. And maybe y'all don't notice because y'all aren't looking at men like that, and I am, but like I definitely notice the difference. Like when I see a player do like an interview after practice, I can see the difference in their face. Between that versus when they're doing like a photo shoot or when they're first showing up to the game and they know that pictures are going to be taken. So this isn't something that just affects women. This is something that affects everybody. But of course, women are judged more harshly for it. And I really hope that as we discuss how it's impacting the lives and decisions of young girls and women, that people will understand the weight of their words and the weight of this conversation and how it's being handled and really change how they're approaching this particular topic. And then I think I have one more call out. Okay, so this is a call out that's going to lead into the next segment. So we do have this and one more segment before we get to the topic of the NBA All-Star Game and Wemby and Ant and the ratings of it all, let's just say. So this last call out goes to media personalities who are thirsty for Cowboys drama. So Monday, I woke up and I turned on ESPN. I'm watching Unsportsmanlike, so it was really early in the morning, and I'm watching Unsportsmanlike, and they start talking about how now that the Super Bowl has passed, it's officially Cowboy season, something like that. I should have clipped it, but I don't know. YouTube's been cracking down on copyright, so I didn't clip I didn't make the clip to show you guys, but it was something along those lines that now that the Super Bowl is over, this is the time that the Cowboys shine, and they could not wait to see what drama the Cowboys were going to bring to the table. And they even had a whole segment that was pretty much dedicated to what drama they thought was going to come out of the Dallas Cowboys camp this offseason. And I'm like, okay, it's one thing to kind of make a joke about how the Cowboys have something for people to talk about every offseason. It's another thing to spend like 20 minutes just imagining, just fantasizing about what headline a couple of months from Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I'm like, y'all, there's plenty to talk about. And you're fucking professionals. Like, if it's your job to talk about sports, you should know there is so much more shit to talk about than you dreaming about Jerry Jones giving you a headline. Like, come on. Like, I know it might be a slower time period because, yes, the NFL and they're by the Dallas Cowboys, they do have the largest segments of the sports fan base on lock. but there's still a lot to talk about. If I, with my busy ass schedule, can figure out something to say twice a week and put it on YouTube, I feel like people who are getting paid by the largest sports platform in the world, y'all should figure out something to talk about besides like, oh my God, I can't wait for the Cowboys to say something that we can gossip about. Like, really, really do better. Do better. Anyway, that being said, I did think it would be fun to talk about things that happened this time last year, because when you actually start to kind of look at the cadence of it, I feel like it's less that the Cowboys are actually doing a lot that's out of the ordinary. Like, you might get one or two good quotes from Jerry Jones, but everything else is just really the Cowboys doing normal shit, and then people talking about it, and then people making a big deal about it. And so I went to this time last year. So I didn't go as far as like March or April, but I went to mid-February last year just to see what some of the headlines were. And some of them were quite amusing. So I'm going to pull some up and we're going to do a little bit of a read and react. So the first one I have on my list is an article from rg.org, and it's titled, "There are a lot of things that need to be corrected. Emmitt Smith on the state of the Dallas Cowboys." So this was an article where if you scroll down to the middle, it says, while some have linked Dallas native and Heisman Trophy runner-up Ashton Jeanty to the Cowboys at the 12th overall pick in the draft, we know that didn't happen, Smith says Dallas has bigger problems than just the run game. He said, "I think if they do that, they hurt themselves," said Smith in a one-on-one interview with RG, where he mentioned of the possibility of Cowboys taking Jeanty at number 12. "No disrespect to Ashton Jeanty, but at the end of the day, we have bigger problems than just having a running game." Wasn't wrong there. As Smith clarifies, it's no disrespect to Jeanty. The 21-year-old running back is coming off a stat-filled season at Boise State where he ran for 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. The fit makes sense considering Dallas absolutely struggled to establish a run game during the 2024 season, finishing last in rushing touchdowns. And so it goes on to say, he said, "You still have the same offensive line. You still have the same old offensive mentality, regardless of whether or not you have Derrick Henry back there or Ashton Jeanty." That Derrick Henry reference makes me laugh, looking at it a year in the future. There are a lot of things that need to be corrected. I think it begins with the philosophy of the organization. Also not wrong. He goes on to say they have to look deep within themselves and really figure out who they want, and what the organization wants to be. They need to go back through history and see what has made the organization what it is and why people love the organization. I'm talking about going back through Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett, Drew Pearson, and the Doomsday Defense, and what made the team and what made that organization special. Now, I don't know if I'm with him about going back through history at those guys in particular, but the fact that he mentioned looking at the defense feels almost prophetic at this point. And so, once again, that is an article from 2025, not 2026, where Emmitt Smith lucked up and got it right by essentially, in so many words, saying the Cowboys need to worry about the defense, not the run game. In hindsight, absolutely correct. The next article on this list is Dallas Cowboys legend rips new head. Now, this was an article from Sports Illustrated where they commented on something that was published by TMZ. So it was Michael Irvin, and this is what he said. He said, "There are great odds against around the Cowboys in a great way. You're thinking, maybe God is doing." Now, if you watch the video, this man looked like he might have been in New Orleans, so maybe he was not talking about this. But the quote goes on to say, and this is talking about God. He says, "If he takes a great," referring to God, "and then produces something great, you'll say the man did it. But when he takes a Brian Schottenheimer, the least likely of that position, and he does something great, you yourself will say it must have been God, because we know damn well it wasn't Brian Schottenheimer." So there's Michael Irvin's prediction that if the Cowboys become anything, it was because of an act of God. I actually don't think Brian Schottenheimer would necessarily disagree with him on that. I think a lot of us would give him some credit, but I don't think Shotty would necessarily disagree. The next article on this list is a reminder of where we were this time last year. This is an article that came out on February 5th. The headline says, "Brian Schottenheimer candid on Cowboys offensive plan blueprint in 2025 and beyond." One of the things that he said that was interesting in this particular article, and it's a quote from Brian Schottenheimer. He said, "I'm a big believer in cut splits. I'm a big believer in shifts and motions to distort things. We're going to do a great job of marrying our runs and our passes and make those look the same. I'm proud to say 2 different times in my career as a coordinator, we led the league in rushing, and they go hand in hand. The running game and the action pass game go hand in hand." And so I feel like in hindsight, we can say like, hey, I think he definitely kept that promise. The next article is from CBS Sports, where Cowboys Micah Parsons makes call to action for Dallas to be aggressive in the offseason. And then there's another article from Sports Illustrated where it says, Micah Parsons gets brutally honest on if Derrick Henry would have saved the Cowboys. At the time, Micah Parsons was saying that because of the Cowboys, no, there's not a lot of people who paid attention to what Derrick Henry did in 2025 would say, Derrick Henry just wasn't bringing enough to the table. Would it have been different with the Cowboys? We may never know. But it's just interesting to think about the fact that that was a conversation. And then the last article that I put on this list, which was from February 9th, 2025, was conversations about trading away Micah Parsons. What? Oh my God, you don't. And so this was a report where they just said, based on comments from inside the building, they were saying that people were actually talking about trading away Micah Parsons. And at the time, that turned into a huge debate. And some of the comments on this article talked about. One says, Jerry's sitting there with a thumb up his ass until he has to pay a guy and then pays millions more than he would have a year earlier. That didn't exactly happen. Somebody else said, one can only dream. I'd love to see them trade him. Okay, well, that person's dream was fulfilled. And then one person said, sources say there have at least been some internal discussions about whether to pay Parsons or trade him for a king's ransom. Well, they didn't do either, because I wouldn't necessarily describe that trade as quite a king's ransom. But it is funny to look back on that whole conversation and think about the debates and the number of people who said that that would never happen. Just goes to show you never really know. All right, I'm going to take a quick look at your comments before we get into this break. Let's see. Clement acknowledges next week is the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Oh, my God. This time is flying by way too fast. Way too fast. But good to see you in the chat, Clement. Thanks for stopping by. Clement, while you're here, one, how are you feeling about your Gunners? I remember seeing your post on Twitter where you wanted Arteta fired. And they're looking pretty good now. Not necessarily talking about the game against Wigan, because that was pretty much a giveaway, although who really predicted 4 goals. But how are you feeling about your Gunners? Also, I'm wondering if I should try to do a Premier League watch-along or an FA Cup watch-along sometime in the near future. Do you think I'm ready? Do you think that could be fun? Let me know what you think in the chat. JV, I think referring to people talking about how women in sports look, said, some were disrespectful. I challenged one of those characters. Good. I feel like there need to be more challenges women like that, because that's the only way that it'll change. Clement goes on to say, Christian Parker press conference tomorrow at 3 p.m. Yes. Make sure you watch that. I probably won't go live about it, but if y'all see me go live afterwards, that means something interesting happened. If it's a regular basic press conference where there's no real surprises, then I might not go live until Friday. But like tomorrow's Wednesday, it's usually a pretty slow day in terms of work. So I might have time tomorrow. I might have time. JV said, about time. Agreed. I literally was Googling it today. I was like, did Christian Parker do a press conference yet? What is going on? And so I was happy to see that apparently it's happening tomorrow. Clement says, I don't care about headlines this offseason. I need us to get the correct players in free agency, draft well, and get ready for training camp in July. Here. Agreed. I don't need to see a damn headline except that we made some moves in free agency and that, they've got a plan for the draft. And Clement also says, early prediction, the 2026 Dallas Cowboys season will come down to 5 things for me. 1, developing a power running game along with the zone running and stopping the inside run and zone running. Wait, is that one thing or did you put 5 things in one? I don't know. Maybe you're still typing and I'll see it during the break. All right, so we got about a minute left in this segment before we get to the break. So just a preview of what we're going to be talking about whenever we come back. I am going to be talking about the WNBA All-Star Weekend, what went right, what didn't go quite as right, and also getting into this whole conversation about the face of the NBA and why it even matters. Because we need to get on the same page about some things, because I think there are some assumptions that people are making about the NBA and how it's doing that aren't necessarily correct. And so as we even begin to discuss the issue of who's the face of the I keep wanting to say WNBA, who's the face of the NBA, I feel like we need to make sure that we have our facts straight on certain things when it comes to the NBA. And so that's going to be coming up in the next segment. So if y'all have thoughts on it, feel free to throw that in the chat, and I'll start the next segment with whatever y'all's thoughts are. If you have any strong opinions on Anthony Edwards or Wemby or Cade Cunningham or anyone else for that matter, like, you know, surprisingly, SGA hasn't come up as a strong contender in this particular conversation. But we'll talk about it after we pay a few bills, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with the rest of Bitches Love Sports.
Hey travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find ridiculously low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50% off business and first class tickets.
855-325-1820. 855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
What's our back? Thank y'all for tuning in to today's episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm here in the studio, powered by NTX Radio, which I know y'all saw some of my posts where I was saying like, yeah, we're still working on the studio. The studio is still being worked on. It is a work in progress, but you can see a few things have changed. More changes are coming. Really excited. So I want to take a look at some of the comments y'all put in the chat during the break. So Clement said, yes, you should do Premier League live stream with fans from Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal, and Chelsea. So I would probably stick to Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester United because those are the teams I've been watching the most. But I'm going to be honest, Clement, you're the only Premier League fan I actually know. So I might do a watch along and nobody shows up. But yeah, I just want to see if I can actually talk about the game during like a full game, because like I have thoughts, but I'm not going to pretend to be an analyst. But I think I could have fun with it though. I think I could have fun with it. And it looks like you've continued your top 5 list of things that you want to see change, most of it dealing with the defense. And I definitely agree that most of the issues that the Cowboys are going to have to fix revolve around the defense. I know there's been a conversation about what the Cowboys should focus on in terms of free agency. And right now, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's got to be the corner position when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys and free agency, just because when it comes to who you're least likely to find to step in right away and make a difference in the draft, and you compare that to what the defensive side needs the most, I feel like that Venn diagram has I feel like that Venn diagram has cornerback in the middle, and maybe edge rusher, but definitely corner is a need. So. But we'll see what they end up doing. That's another reason why I don't put a ton of effort, a ton of energy into these conversations, because it's like you spend 3 months talking about decisions the Cowboys should make, and they do some other shit that you didn't even see coming, and it's way more fun. Not to knock the people who have fun with these conversations. There's other shit to talk about, at least from my perspective, like the NBA All-Star Game, the NBA All-Star Weekend, and so. I'm going to tell y'all the reason why I was interested in All-Star Weekend, even though I haven't been heavily into the NBA, so but I am going to get more into playoffs, obviously, but to see what would happen with All-Star Weekend is because I feel like one of the NBA's biggest struggles the past few years is, okay, how do we really engage our fan base? How do we really get them invested and involved instead of just complaining about teams tanking and load management and things of that nature? And so the NBA All-Star Game is one of those things that has been declining over the past several years, and I just wanted to see, could they bring it back? Could they get it to the point where fans are actually invested in that? Because fans being invested in that is a sign that they're invested in the other aspects of the NBA. And so based on the game itself, the answer is yes. So it had a different format that involved 3 different teams, the Stars, the Stripes, and Team World. So Team World was made up of non-American NBA players, so people from places like France. In the case of Victor Wembanyama, for example. Um, and then they also had Team Stars, which was the younger NBA players, and then Team Stripes, which was the more veteran NBA players. And they played like a round-robin format of 12-minute games, and then the teams with the best records played each other. It got people excited. It got people invested. And according to reports, according to quotes, Victor Wembanyama really set the tone, saying that he was going to show up, he was going to compete, he was going to play hard. He did. And then Anthony Edwards, who ended up winning the All-Star MVP award, admitted that Wemby being fired up kind of fired him up, made him want to play a little bit better. He didn't want to get showed up. He felt like he had to, he had something to prove. Like, he basically let his ego lead the way in a good way. And so it led to exciting games. Now, one thing that I will say is that the dunk contest apparently still does need a lot of work. And we're going to come back to that in a second, because the reason why the dunk contest was a fail is related to the reason why other aspects of the NBA right now are still failing. And the reason why I say other aspects is because there's actually, contrary to how the conversation is going, there's no specific aspect of the NBA that is actually failing. So when it comes to the All-Star Game itself, the ratings were actually up. I feel like this always happens with me in my notes. I put them somewhere and then I can't find them because I have way too many tabs. So when it comes to the All-Star Game, the ratings were up by 87% year over year. That is that is a lot. That is a lot. So in numerical terms, that was about 8.8 million viewers is an increase. Now, people are only talking about the All-Star Game, but there are some people who are still saying, well, like the NBA, the ratings overall are actually down. And so that's what I felt the need to get on the same page about, is if not true. So here are the numbers of the 2025-2026 season stats. So the All-Star game, like I said, is up 87% year over year. The overall national average is up 16% year over year. The Christmas Day slate was up 84% year over year. And then the total fan reach is up 87% year over year. So then you've got to ask yourself, if everything is going up, why do people feel like the NBA is somehow not doing as well? So then I looked at revenue and ticket sales, and it looks like those things are all the way up as well. So when it comes to the jersey sales, okay, so we'll start with attendance because that's what I have first on my sheet. Attendance, it looks like they're still filling arenas at about 97% capacity. And so that's momentum that actually started last season that has continued into this season. They haven't dropped off. Ticket revenue, they're still generating over $5 million per game. And seating and luxury suites account for 28% of total revenue. So it's not even like they're just selling cheap tickets and that's how they're filling arenas. They're selling VIP packages. And so when it comes to total overall revenue, there's actually an increase of 12% year over year. So even the overall revenue is going up, and even jersey sales have gone up by 12.3 to 12.7% in 2026. And so that's an estimated $1.48 to $1.52 billion in global revenue. And so that leads to two conversations. One, when we're talking about global ratings, global revenue, it's like, okay, is it that maybe things are down in the US, but globally they're up? And so that's something else that we can look into, because I think sometimes American fans especially compare the NBA to the NFL. And if you look at those numbers, like, yeah, the NBA is dwarfed. So the NBA is doing better than they did last year, and they're on the rise. Like, the lines are going in the right direction. But if you compare them to the NFL, it's like, no, they're losing if you're comparing one league to another. So just don't make those comparisons if you're an NBA fan and you're looking for the NBA to do well and to succeed. Um, and then there's the other conversation about the numbers versus the quote unquote vibes. So when I say vibes, what I mean is there's a difference between TV ratings and how people feel about the NBA, how people engage with the NBA. And so the thing about the ratings, and this is what some people are speculating, they're speculating that the reason why the ratings are up is because a lot of the games have been moved to NBC. And so with NBC being it's kind of popular right now. They had they aired the Super Bowl, and now they've got the Winter Olympics. And so there are a lot of televisions that are just on NBC a lot more these days. This is what people are saying. And so they're saying that the NBA is just kind of getting a residual benefit of all that. And so that's a legitimate argument. And so that's why we kind of have to see what the NBA does moving forward. So once the Winter Olympics are over, and now that you've got ESPN talking about what they're bringing to the table in terms of NFL coverage, how is the NBA going to continue to stack up? And that's where some people kind of get into the marketing of it and get into who's the next face of the NBA. And that led me to thinking about, like, why does it feel like this is a question every single season? Who's the face of the NBA? It just feels like every year they cannot settle on a face of the NBA. And so I kind of looked into the past a little bit to see, like, okay, why does this keep happening? Why do they keep moving off of one person to another? And so in some cases, it's kind of obvious. So for one thing, there's a story of Ja Morant. And so people kind of understand what happened with Ja Morant and why he's not the face of the NBA. They wanted him to be the face of the NBA. That definitely seemed to be the plan, especially in terms of the endorsements that he was getting and the commercials that he was doing. But the NBA, they are not really big on controversy. Like, once you get suspended, once you violate rules a couple of times, especially if it's the same rule, that's kind of it for you. And so once he had the situation where, he brandished a firearm in a nightclub and then again on Instagram Live, and then there was that whole situation where he was suspended. Was it indefinitely or was it for a really long time? I don't remember what the actual, quote unquote sentence was, so to speak. But I do remember he was suspended for a long time because they were just like, yo, stop pulling out your weapons. What are you doing? And so even though he was accused of potentially committing assault, but outside of that, there were no major crimes that he was convicted of. But it was the fact that he was violating NBA rules. And it was a bad look in terms of what the NBA wanted for who represented them. And so while they, before that, were pushing him to be the face of the NBA, that fell through. So you kind of see why that happened. There was also the situation with the Ball brothers and the Ball family. And when Lonzo Ball was coming into the league and they talked about his brothers also potentially coming into the league, there was a lot of talk about, okay, these guys could be the new faces. And then their dad started running his mouth and kind of messed it up. Now, their dad did have his reasons for wanting to be defensive of his role as a father and defensive of his sons. I get that. So it's not so much the fact that he was running his mouth. It was more so the way that he went about it. You can only do so much in terms of disrespecting the league, disrespecting people who are important to the league before it's like, no, we are just not going to allow you to have the kind of influence that you want to have, And that was another big part of it. It was the fact that he did seem to be getting so much influence, using it in ways that I think the NBA probably thought were detrimental. They were like, hey, we don't want this guy running around thinking that he can do whatever he wants. People are looking at him like an extension of the NBA. He's not in alignment with us. No, cut it out. And so that happened. And the Ball brothers have kind of paid the price for that in terms of their own visibility and which brands have decided to align themselves with them. We've also had people like the Draymond Greens of the world. Now, Draymond gets a lot of attention, but that's yet another situation where it's like if you push the envelope, if you break rules, if you get suspended so many times, the NBA is just going to be like, no. And then you've got like the apathetic people, right? I feel like that's why Jason Tatum didn't become officially the face of the league, right? He's been injured for a while. Was it May that he got hurt? Ruptured Achilles tendon, I think happened in May. I know he's on his way back. But even before then, people just felt like he didn't quite have enough fire, enough edge. He didn't really have the it factor. So then you kind of have to look at, okay, there's got to be somebody in between Draymond Green in terms of edge and in terms of having that competitive factor versus just seeming apathetic, And I feel like the only other person that I haven't mentioned is probably Devin Booker. And I have to mention him because, like, if you've been watching this podcast since the beginning, Devin Booker was my heart and soul for a while. And I feel like the new ownership that took over, like when Matt Ishbia took over, that really messed up his trajectory in terms of his development and what he could have been in the league. Because when Chris Paul was brought into the Phoenix Suns, the understanding at that time was that Chris Paul was going to basically help Devin Booker fill in the gap from where he was to what it took to be a true leader of the Phoenix Suns, lead the team to playoffs and championships, and be the face of the NBA. And they got to the playoffs. People thought that they were going to go to the finals and win. That didn't exactly play out. And there was the assumption that they would just try again. But next thing you know, Monty Williams gets fired. Monty Williams was very close to Devin Booker and very invested in his career. Chris Paul gets shipped off to another team. And then they tried this whole big three situation that as soon as it was announced, I said, that is not going to work. Why do people keep trying to act like Kevin Durant is a leader? He's not a leader. So they shipped off Chris Paul, they shipped off Monty Williams, who was invested in Devin Booker, and they brought in Kevin Durant, who is not a leader, and Bradley Beal, and it was just like, what in the world is going on here? Like, how do you expect to form a true big three with three dudes who are injured all the fucking time? And so that was kind of the end of Devin Booker's path to becoming I shouldn't say the end. It was an obstacle. We'll say that road is under construction because, like, there's still time for him to bounce back and find his way back to being a leader and possibly even the face of the NBA. But he's definitely not in those conversations right now. And so that's what brings us to Anthony Edwards and Wemby. And the question of, it seems to be a question of these two guys in particular. Now, there are a lot of people who debate, Like, what does it mean to be the face of the NBA, and what should be the requirements? Now, like I just told y'all, the NBA is actually on its way up in terms of ratings. Ratings are up, revenue is up, jersey sales are up, attendance is up. The NBA is doing good. So why then is there discrepancy between what the numbers are showing and what people feel like the NBA needs? And so that's why I feel like, even though the numbers aren't showing it yet, what I believe, what I'm sensing is that these vibes, quote unquote, that people are getting about the lack of interest and the lack of engagement could actually be a leading indicator. And so, like, if you pay attention to statistics, there's leading indicators and there's lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are things that kind of tell you the story of something that's already been recorded, something that's already happened. And then leading indicators kind of tell you, like, hey, you might want to watch this area, right? The only thing is, you can't really quantify vibes. You can't really quantify a feeling, you know? And so that's what makes a leading indicator, like the vibes around the league, kind of tough. Because, you know, when people say the NBA needs a new face, the NBA needs better marketing, the NBA needs better storytelling, it's so easy to point to, oh, but revenue, ratings, everything is up. So they don't actually need those things. But if vibes, if those feelings are actually a leading indicator, then what that means is the NBA should take care of those things now, because those numbers are going to drop if they don't. And that could very well be true. And so when it comes to the NBA, I feel like that's why this conversation is actually important. And I actually feel like when it comes to the answer of who should be the face, I say, why not both? Why not both? And here's why I say that. I feel like there are different people who will gravitate to different stories in the NBA. And I think if you try to go to the old model of having one person that everybody kind of gravitates to, one person that everybody watches the game to see, you're not going to capture the audience that you could have, especially considering the fact that so much NBA content is consumed online. And what do we know about online content? The algorithms run everything. So people are delivered what they're searching for. And so that gives you the opportunity to say, hey, we can create content around multiple people and either have multiple people who are bringing eyes, multiple people who are bringing an audience to these games, or we just see what sticks and what works and what doesn't. And so the truth is, there are still some people who think Draymond Green is dope, and they do want to see more physicality in the NBA, and they do want to see guys with a little bit more edge, even if it means they get suspended a couple of times, once a season, whatever it happens to be. There are people who are going to be inspired by Wembanyama, or just amazed by him and his sheer size, and they just want to see what he's going to do every week. There's going to be a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who are very much invested in the story of Ant Edwards, and they like his charm, they like his charisma, they like his particular brand of trash talk. That's why in the thumbnail I referred to Wemby versus Ant as kind of the alien versus Aura, because they call Wemby the alien, one, because he's not from America, which I guess you could call that rude if you want to, but also because his size and proportions are practically non-human. Like, you don't see people built like that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, the alien moniker is kind of earned whenever you kind of see what he looks like. But when it comes to the aura, when it comes to that je ne sais quoi, I feel like Anthony Edwards has it. You know, he's marketable, he's fun, he attracts people to the game in a different way. He has like that quiet competitor attitude that makes a lot of people say, I want to see more from this guy. I want to see what this guy brings to the table. I like watching this guy play, but I also like watching his interviews. I also like his shoes. I also like his social media posts. You know what I'm saying? And so there are definitely going to be people who are drawn to that. But in terms of what the NBA is trying to do right now, which I feel like it's a great thing that their numbers are up. I feel like that's obviously working in their favor. But I also think it's a bad time for them to rest on their laurels, especially considering what the NFL is doing in terms of planting a flag on their market share and what they're doing in ratings and in terms of money and in terms of pushing out content. Because although you don't you're not going to see a situation where the NBA compete. The NBA is not in a position to win that battle right now. However, what they don't want to see is their numbers start to go down and their market share starts to shrink as the NFL continues to expand all the different projects that they're working on. So right now, the NFL has mastered the art of the year-round calendar. It's like as soon as one thing ends, you already know when it's time to look towards the next thing. Like as soon as the Super Bowl ended, they were on there like, hey, next Super Bowl is going to be in LA. It's going to be on ESPN. Disney's going to be involved. It's going to be so dope. You don't want to miss it. This mess is a year away and they're already talking about it. You've got people in the chat talking about the combine. So the NFL is like, hey, Super Bowl just ended. Make sure you're watching the combine. Make sure you're watching the draft. Make sure you watch our OTA coverage. Make sure you watch our training camp coverage. Preseason's coming up. It's like people have a system. It's like a timeline already mapped out for what to pay attention to with the NFL. And then when the season starts, every Sunday, like clockwork, it's become a ritual for NFL fans. Right now, the NBA doesn't have that ritual quality to it. It doesn't have that, year-round calendar that has people invested. And so that's one of the reasons why I think not only should they be looking at who's going to be the next face of the NBA, I think they have an opportunity right now to actually partner with the WNBA to make more of a basketball universe, So we kind of see a few of the seeds of this planted with the most recent edition of NBA 2K, with them allowing players to add WNBA players to their My Team. Right? And so we're seeing people like, don't Reddit threads, don't look at the Twitter threads. Those places are toxic. They're technically not even real. Don't look at those for feedback about how people are receiving that particular feature. Look at the fact that people are actually using it. Look at the fact that people like seeing Paige Beckers on a team with SGA. And I'm not saying that that's something that should happen in real life. But what I am saying that in terms of the storytelling, in terms of promoting the sport of basketball, there is so much room for content to be made that involves WNBA players and NBA players. Because as the WNBA was growing, like, yes, college women's basketball was growing. But what were some of the other storylines that we saw in the media? We saw NBA players showing up to WNBA games. We saw WNBA players showing up to NBA games. We saw them on podcasts together. We saw WNBA players going to NBA All-Star Weekend and vice versa. I feel like by leaning into that, you can start to tap into the people who love the game of basketball. You can start to figure out which friendships people like to hear more about. You can start to tap into which types of content people make well together. And that way, as the numbers are going up and the NBA continues to do well in terms of revenue, in terms of ratings, you don't accidentally lose the people who are there for the content, who are there for the vibes, and who are there for the entertainment and personality factors that the NBA can very much still about in the chat before we get out of here. Clement says, chat, knowing that Las Vegas and Seattle will become the two newest NBA franchises, should it be the 2-16 team conference or 8-4 teams conferences with top 4 seeds having home court advantage? Oh, that is a complicated question. Let's see. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. JV says 2-16. Clement says, okay, so top 8 teams in the East and West make the playoffs. Like it. JV says 8 4-team divisions. Okay. I think 8 4-team divisions. It could work. I'm going to be honest, Clement, I hadn't given that much thought to what that would look like in terms of, because the last thing that I read, let's see, did that news come out recently? Because I feel like the last thing that I read only mentioned Seattle and wasn't sure about Vegas. So I don't know. But if that's something that came out like today or yesterday, I can see why I was privy to Seattle and not to Las Vegas. But I will say one thing that I did think was funny while they were talking about how to limit tanking. And this is something that would never happen in the NFL. But somebody said that they should try relegation like what they do in the Premier League. And if you're listening and you're not familiar with that, basically in the Premier League, the bottom 3 teams go to the division below the Premier League at the end of the season. And then the top 3 teams from that lower division go up to the Premier League. So it would be like basically if the bottom 3 NBA teams just went to the G League, if they were in the bottom. And I'm like, yeah, that would definitely stop people from tanking. Oh my God. But because of CBA and team valuations and all that type of shit, the restructure to pull that off. But yeah, so we're about to get out of here. Thanks for having this conversation with me. And if y'all have anything to say after the fact, definitely put your thoughts on the Face of the NBA conversation in the chat and watch your notifications, because once Christian Parker does that press conference, I'm definitely going to have something to say about it. So hopefully we'll have a fun conversation about that too. Thanks for watching this episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'll see y'all later this week. And I'm out.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process. Professional book